Welcome back in. I'm Dan McNeil. It's the Danny Mac podcast heading into week 4 of the NFL season. And wait until you hear what former Bears offensive coordinator Mike Martz has to say about the state of affairs with Team Eberflus. It is not flattering, kids. I want to remind you first that if you like to play, if you love getting down on college and pro football, you can do it with same game, in-game parlays with us at Bet Rivers to earn squares. And those squares can earn you additional chances at bonus bets, points boosts, and $10,000 jackpots. Navigate your way around the Bet Rivers app or just check it out online, betrivers.com, and make some money this weekend.
You're now watching the Danny Mac podcast on the Bet Rivers Network.
It is only 3 weeks, but it hasn't started well for Matt Eberflus's Bears on the offensive side of the ball. You need points to win in the NFL. Mike Martz and his offense produced points with the Rams for 7 years. The orchestrator of the greatest show on turf is with me today. And Mike, good to have you on board. There's a bit of a panic in Chicago after just 3 weeks. It's not started as anticipated for young Caleb Williams. Should everybody just calm down a little bit right now?
No, I think the panic's warranted. I think there's a lot of guys injured, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know all the specifics, but they've got a few guys hurt on that team. But I will tell you this, in my opinion, they got this one right with Caleb Williams. This young man is special. I liked him out of college, but when I watch him in the NFL, and I know he's run for his life at the time, but the things I see from him, he's courageous. He'll stand in there and make these. He's got this dynamic, quick release. He's accurate. He's tough. He sees things quickly and diagnose it. He just, my goodness, he's just getting killed back there physically. They're not blocking anybody.
Yeah, that offensive line is bad, and there have been injuries there. They were supposed to be starting somebody different at center, but Ryan Bates acquired in a deal with Buffalo, wasn't healthy, started the season on IR, and Coleman Shelton hasn't gotten it done. Nate Davis can't be counted on. How do you win? How do you patchwork on the fly with an offensive line that doesn't have NFL chops up front?
Well, the offensive line we had when I was there, 2 years. Other than the center, who was a great player, those 2 tackles were out of the league after 1 year, and they were young players after I left. So, we went through the same thing. We had a really good center, and Garcia and guard. Those 2 guys are good players, but the edge guys, they couldn't hold up. But what you have to do, and we had a terrific runner. Terrific. He was 55 or 60% of our offense, and we had to hang our hat on because we couldn't drop back and throw the ball. Jay's going to get hammered. So, what they're missing right now to take the edge off and to calm things down, they need in my opinion, I'd even go to 2 tight ends and just play power football, hang on to the ball as long as you can. This kid's good enough to make some really great throws, even with a 1 receiver offense out there, and just get as physical as you can up front, and let him play a little bit and settle down and then just kind of bring him back. But what I don't think, and this is something that has gone away finally, thank goodness. In the league, for the last 10 years, they've been playing open edge football. And by that, I mean, there's nobody outside the tackles. It's just a running back in the tackles, and all these receivers and tight ends are removed. Well, you're limited in your protection. It's hard to protect the quarterback. We used to use at times 2 tight ends and the back, to protect. And you've got to do some of those things to shore it up. And I watch them get blitzed, and they got 2 guys coming off the edge, and nobody's accounting for those guys. Well, what do? Do you side adjust that? You can turn to it, or just see this happen way too many times to know that something's going on there. There's just a disconnect there somehow, but it's not get back to basics. That's not what I'm talking about. But if they had a dynamic running game, it would certainly help them immensely.
They have hinted already this week about getting back to basics, and they have attempted to go with double tight and run the ball. They had 26, 28 rushes against the Colts, but only averaged 2.3 yards. Mike, I think they wasted August again. Coaches do this in this league all the time. DeAndre Swift had 2 snaps in their 4 preseason dates. How is that acceptable?
It's not. In my opinion, not. And I would tell you, and I don't want to, Matt I know is an excellent coach, but old school football, when I was coaching, what you did, the most important position in all NFL football is the offensive line. Done. That's it. Because if you're good there, it keeps the defense off the field and allows you to do whatever you want on offense. Everything starts with these guys, and everything starts in the running game. So when we went to camp, we didn't throw a whole lot in the first week or two. What we did is we just hammered it. We got that running game. And then we started every practice with a lot of runs in pads. And so when you get back into these situations, you got to go back and run the football. You can't. And, you have to be careful about experimenting in a running game too. And I think we're all guilty of that. But whatever they believe in the running game, they just got to get good at. The best example to me is Detroit. They only have 2 or 3 runs. That's all they run. And they're as good at running the ball as anybody in the league. And the players understand it. No matter what you do on defense, they kind of have an answer for it. You know what I mean? And what you're going to have to do is go through some of those games where you only get 2 yards of rest. But you can't just abandon it. You have to have enough attempts in there, and the defense will appreciate that as well.
You speak very highly of Caleb Williams. Can a great prospect, Caleb Williams or anybody, be ruined by a bad first-year experience?
I've seen it happen many times in the league. Guys get beat up. They can't get any help. And then what happens, they get all these bad fundamentals because they're just trying to survive in there. What you don't want them to do is go through this year just trying to survive. They don't get any better. They just go the opposite direction. And then they get injured, and then they get a little gun shy, and it happens all the time in the league, and I think, look at Steve Young. He was down at Tampa. He just had a miserable experience down there. Passer rating was the lowest in the league. He goes to San Francisco, and he's, winning a really good offensive line, a good football team, and he's a Hall of Famer. The situations, there are a lot of good players out there that are never realized just because of the situation they become, that they get put into.
What would you tell Caleb Williams?
I will tell you this, this guy is a diamond. I promise you they got right with Caleb. This kid is really special.
What would you tell him if you had 10 minutes with him today?
I think the biggest thing is don't panic, get the ball out quick, and really don't make a bad play worse. And that's what young guys do all the time. They feel like they got to make a play because they're not winning, and then things just go downhill even faster. Get the ball out fast, protect yourself, don't make a bad play worse, and just tell him that he's really, really going to be a great player in this league, and it's going to happen. Just be patient.
Bill Belichick recently said the Bears have a roster construction problem, and it didn't really garner much attention because when Belichick talks, he's so monotone and, matter of fact about it, but it was quite an indictment. Do you believe they are that flawed to where you could say that is their biggest problem? Because that sounds cancerous to me. It doesn't sound like an infection.
Well, it's always kind of been that way. When I was there, 85% of the salary was on the defense. And then Cutler took a big chunk of the offense. So what's left to us, right? So that's a lopsided situation. It's just not healthy. I think they've lost some really good players. I'm not sure why they lost them, why they let them out of there. They lost a terrific linebacker. The one thing that I've never seen them really do, to be honest with you, is put together a dynamic offensive line. Either trade for guys or use high picks to get offensive linemen in there. And I think that's just so vital to a healthy team. And, then Detroit's got the runner, and he was the one diamond in that offense here a couple of years ago that I turned on the TV to watch him. He's a good player. Now, he's not there. DeAndre Swift, can he be that? I don't know. But they got to get him involved and let these guys come off the ball. And you can't get better at running the ball unless you run the ball.
Do you think they should have drafted an offensive lineman at 9 instead of Rome Odunze, the wide receiver?
Looking at their offensive line, I think it's always specific to a situation. I would say absolutely. Absolutely. You've got to put together, here you got a great, and I think he's going to be a great quarterback. Receivers are a dime a dozen, to be honest with you. They're not hard to find. Good ones, you can get them from anywhere in the draft. But really good offensive linemen are very difficult to come by.
Mike, I'm laughing because you say they're a dime a dozen. And the Bears' career receiving record is that of Johnny Morris's, and he last played in 1967. They haven't had enough dimes, apparently, to find some guys.
Well, when I was here, we played with a bunch of guys that were special teams guys. Johnny Knox, they were all here. Every one of those receivers was here to be a special teams player and then be a wide receiver. That's what we went to the NFC Championship with. So that's what I'm saying. You just kind of you can make do with those guys. You really can. But what you can't make do is if you're not good in the offensive line, it just really does all start there. I would love to see them draft and trade next year, get some free agents in there and build up that offensive line and get better. That's the only way they're going to get better.
I looked at your numbers the other day with the Rams, 99, 2000, 2001. You had the number one passing offense in the NFL. And then you took a colossal dip in your fourth year and finished second. And then third. I mean, you were top 5 all 7 years there and never even close with Chicago and Jay Cutler. As you reflect on the Cutler failures in 2 years, the Bears failures, I should say.
Well, he definitely the first year was, I kind of think it was probably my fault. I didn't really understand Jay. When I coached quarterbacks, here's what we're doing. They would go out and they'd try to do it. Jay had been wrong. I never had a guy like Jay. He kind of had his way of doing things initially. So when I call a play, I didn't know where the ball was going. Usually when you call a play, it's going to go right where it's supposed to go. And so he and I, that first year, we go to the NFC Championship and everything, but he played okay, but not what I thought he should be. The second year, I changed. Sat down and trimmed some of the stuff he didn't like out, listened to what he was good at. And, when he got injured we were the number 4 offense in the NFL when he got hurt. After 10 games, we were 4th in the league on offense. And the Bears had never cracked the top 10. And we were 7-3. We beat the Chargers. The receiver slips on a slant route at the end of the game in the fourth quarter. They pick it. He runs it, tackles, and then he's out. That's it.
Yeah.
And then we lose the running back the next week. So those 2 guys were everything. And once they were gone, then it was tough. But yeah, I mean, I think Jay was really good that second season. The second year, I was really pleased with him. He's really progressing well. I think he had a heck of a year until he got injured.
It was a shock he was interested in making a tackle, but that is how he got hurt. I remember it well. How difficult was he to coach? It couldn't have been easy. He's a surly SOB who doesn't like people around him very often, it appears.
Well, he was not like that with me. He was always very respectful, kind of matter of fact. He actually gave me a couple of books to read. He knew I liked to read. We had a good relationship. We had a great relationship until the end. And then I don't know why it kind of went south. I don't know. I really don't know.
Did you ask?
No. By then, I decided I was going to retire. After they got hurt, I just kind of told Lovey, I think when the season's over, this will be it. So I didn't, I just, at that point, I was so disappointed in the way the season ended. And he was injured. Matt was injured. We lost Johnny Knox. Those are 3 big parts of our offense. You lose all 3 of those guys coming down the stretch. Now we were able to beat Minnesota in the last game.
Mm-hmm.
That was we tried to put it together every week, but Caleb he'd never played before. I don't think he threw 100 passes in college. And this is the thing that bothers me about the Bears. When I was there that first year, I said we need to have an adequate backup because the chances of 70% of them don't make it through the season. Mark Bolger wanted to come for $1 million and back up. And they said, no, we'll do it for $800, but which at the time was the minimum. Mark had his own jet. He was going to fly in there. He just wanted to come play for us, and he'd back us up. And that was a great insurance policy, and they wouldn't do it for $1 million. Now he ends up going to Baltimore as a backup for $4 million. Why wouldn't they do that? It didn't make any sense.
You know, if I had $1 for every story I've heard like this, I could go fishing for a week somewhere, Coach. Dave Wanstead couldn't get 250 grand out of Mike McCaskey years ago to back up Eric Kramer, who was always hurt. It's an organization that just doesn't seem to be able to get out of its own way, isn't it?
I think McCaskey's wonderful people, love talking to them. I think they still live in 1985 and let the grass grow real long, make everybody slow down, play great defense, run the football, and throw a couple passes and go home. Well, that's just not the league today.
Wow, that's an indictment. You know, you say your relationship with the McCaskies was good, but they have not exactly been people when it comes to getting the best coaches. Dave McGinnis wanted you to be his offensive coordinator in 99, and
Yes.
Dave McGinnis got jacked. He was told to be dishonest to the assistants he was trying to bring in. You
Yes.
and Leslie Frazier, tell him it's guaranteed for all four when they were only guaranteeing 2 freaking years. And this stuff keeps happening. They flew Dan Quinn to Chicago and coached 2 years ago for the job Eberflus got. I mean, it just doesn't end as much as they'd like to let us believe it has.
They have their way of doing things, but Dave McGinnis and I are good friends, and Dave called. He was so excited about that job, and I wanted to come work for him so bad. I thought, man, Chicago, and this is going to be awesome. And he calls me from the office, and they've already announced that he's going to be the head coach. They went ahead and announced it, and it just really infuriated him. And they weren't going to pay him commensurate with what he probably deserved, but that's okay. He didn't worry about that. He was worried about getting good assistants in there, and it wasn't so much the length of the contract, but how much they were going to pay us. You know, I'd have had to take from a quarterback position at the Redskins. I was going to take a pay cut to go there. Evidently, I can't do that. You know, how can you do that, right? So none of that makes sense. None of it makes sense. But that's just the way things are there. It's the way it's always been. It just has never changed.
Well, what I remember, Dave told me, and we refreshed the conversation before the opener because the Bears had the Titans, and Dave's on Titans radio. The money wasn't great, but you're right. He was willing to take it. He was pissed his mom had to learn about it on the crawl on ESPN. And then
Yes.
Michael McCaskey said, I'm not guaranteeing more than 2 years. And how in the world do you ask young guys, and you guys are vagabonds anyway as young coaches living in these jerkwater towns all over America. You're going to ask guys to move their families for 2 years, and Michael McCaskey has the balls to say, lie to them.
Well, 2 years was back then was pretty normal, but it wasn't so much the 2 years again, because it would roll over every year. You know what I mean? So in other words, you go through that first season, they would always add so it's not that bad. What was bad was the amount. To live there for that amount of money just wasn't going to make it.
No more coach. You get the Cleveland Indians playing from the movie Major League for the road trips if you're going to get real money. Mike, it's a pleasure visiting with you today. I'm glad you took some time out for us. Optimistic they can turn this thing around going forward. If they lose to the Rams and fall to 1-3 Sunday, that's a hard hole to dig yourself out of, especially with a back-end loaded schedule with the divisional games in San Francisco looming.
Well, just remember how bad we looked that first year when we went to the NFC Championship. We looked bad early. And you just kind of get going, and you got the young quarterback. He'll get better. They've got to shore up their protections and get Swift more involved in the game. They can do that. You know, at this time of year, anything can happen. Nobody's really defined who they are as a team yet. That takes to about mid-season before everybody starts, okay, that's who they are. They're, this or that. I think there's hope. And I believe in Matt. I think Matt's a real good coach. I think they have to have some issues on offense to address, obviously, and If they take care of those things, absolutely. I don't know if they will, but they've got to get the runner going, and they've got to strip that offensive line. The quarterback, I will tell you again, he's unique. He's special.
They have to make a deal for an offensive lineman, don't they?
Two
of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then
Mike,
the other thing I would tell you, just if I can just interrupt just a second, when you get a young quarterback, you're going to come at him with all kinds of elaborate blitzes, stuff he's never seen before, and you have to know that as a coach when you're putting in these protections. You have to expect that, so you got to prepare him for this, and then you got to give him answers for all this stuff. You should never have somebody come and clean on the quarterback. He's either got to have somebody throw the ball quick, or you're going to block him, and that's not happening.
Mike, thank you for the visit. I enjoyed it. Have a great weekend, and we'll be in touch down the road. Enjoy your day.
Thank you.
Mike Martz, Bears offensive coordinator, 2010, 2011, 7 years with the Rams, the greatest show on turf, changing offense as the 21st century opened up. I want to thank Randy Merkin, who gets me all of my guests for the Danny Mac podcast. Sam Michael is the executive producer, assisted today by Shane Warren in Cleveland, Alex Pastor, Troy Mocker, and Adam Delavitt, who is the baby Capone of our network. I'm Dan McNeil. Enjoy week 4.